Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Ask Me Anything. I am Yasha Saba. We are here in the Bay Area and we are going to answer your estate planning questions. First question, if I provide for my son and my husband provides for his son in our wills, if I pass first, does his son get everything and does my son get nothing? We have separate wills. In the estate planning world, there's a legal term for this. We call it a blended family. Kind of like the Cinderella effect, where daughter from father, Cinderella had her father, he passed away, and then she had her stepmother and her two stepsisters. Here, this lady has her son, her new husband has his son, and they're creating their own estate plans. Most of the time, when people create their own estate plans, what they do is they have their wills and they say, if something happens to me, it goes to my husband. Husband will say, if something happens to me, it goes to my wife. So that's a good thing. What she's worried about, though, is how is she going to protect her son? So she does have a legitimate concern here, especially if you don't create some kind of avenue. When people are doing wills, what usually happens is one spouse might have an insurance policy or some kind of small amount of money to show that if something happens to them, show their biological child that they do care about them, that they do want them to be taken care of, and doesn't just have everything going to their surviving spouse. Most of the time, blended families, they just don't do this. And what I have seen multiple times where a parent has died and everything went to the surviving spouse, the new spouse, and the children, the original biological children, the new spouse's stepchildren get really upset and there's a lot of family conflict. So in order for us to reduce the amount of family conflict, here's my suggestion to you. I would get an insurance policy and make your son the beneficiary of that. That way, when you pass away and everything goes to your husband, then at the very least, your son is going to get something. And that way, your son doesn't have to go to husband saying, hey, give me money. But maybe your son's a minor, or maybe you don't want your son to have that much money all at once, right? So I actually recommend that you don't necessarily just set up a will. Create a trust. Within a trust, you have a lot more control, privacy, and it's easier for the family to work together because they're not in court hiring their own lawyers and everything. So what would happen here is, and I have a lot of blended family clients, and this is what we typically do, is upon the first spouse to pass away, the assets will split between a survivor trust, that is all of your husband's assets, and then your share of the community property will go to your husband in the survivor's trust, and then your separate property, the property and the assets and the money that you had before your marriage, as well as any life insurance policy that you want, goes into the marital trust. The marital trust is not revocable. Your husband's survivor trust will be revocable. So the marital trust, these are two sub-trusts within your joint trust together. The marital trust will take care of your husband during his life, but this way we can preserve the principal for your son so that should something happen to your husband, it doesn't go to his son or his estate, it passes down to your son. And this is how stepchildren can ensure and know that their parents are looking out for them should something happen. Your son will know that you're looking out for him should something happen to you. So when something does happen, then your husband will still be taken care of. Your husband can use that marital trust to continue taking care of your son, his stepchild. But then when something happens to him, all the principal will be preserved for your son. Just by setting this up, even though your son's not getting all the money outright at once, just the fact that he knows that this exists, he is less prone to create conflict with your husband, his stepdad. So that is a huge maneuver you can do, and we've seen through studies that this actually does help lower the amount of family conflict. But yeah, if you're not setting up a trust, you're setting up a will, you can set up a trust through your will to do this exact same thing, or you can get a life insurance policy and name your son as a designated beneficiary. But you do have a good concern. It's a legitimate concern. If something happens to you and you have in your will that everything goes to your surviving spouse and you have children from another marriage, you are setting your whole family up for conflict and mistrust because the children might not identify their stepfather as their parent. In fact, they might just not talk to them anymore and they're thinking, Mom gave everything over to stepdad and we got nothing and we got screwed. And I know you don't want them to think that. They might not be screwed, but that is what they might think. So this is where you can actually protect them by creating a small provision set aside for them. So you can either put some money aside for your son, so if something happens to you, not everything goes to your husband, it goes to him, or set up a trust where the assets will split and your assets will go into a trust that's protected. It'll continue to take care of your husband, but when your husband passes, then it'll all flow down to your son. And that's how you do it with a blended family. Very easy.